Someone asked about Alex Serio says, is there a method of getting a pop-up email address form in Squarespace? I've seen some plugins, but what would he do about that? Seems like an email, any email service will have a HTML that you can just put on your website.
Sure. I've played with Squarespace. I can't say I'm an expert at it, but I can talk about the whole pop-up thing. I think it's generally thought of now as something highly interruptive. And while I know I have some clients who like using it and swear they had success with it, there's a lot of reasons not to do it, because anything that interrupts the visitor, is really considered a bad thing. And Google's actually targeting sites now that do this, especially on mobile. And my understanding is it's the percentage of the screen in which it takes up. So on a mobile device, these things take up a large amount of real estate.
Yeah.
And so it renders the content unusable. And I don't know about the audience here, but for me, it's very annoying when I go to a website and I want to read and some pop-up is happening, whatever it is, whether it's an ad or an email or anything else. What I tend to recommend people is to strategically place the email capture somewhere on a page. And so, for example, on No Trouble, we have a variety of different ways to subscribe. You can subscribe to a contributor. You can subscribe to see the the video of the day, things of that nature. And we place those forms at the bottom of the articles of those sections. And we find great success with that. We're not interrupting anybody. It's below the content, where the natural ending spot is for somebody anyway. So if they had just enjoyed what they read or watched, there's the subscribe form.
Okay. Hello, Corey Sherman. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for inviting me to this webinar here.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to learning some stuff about the website here. Sorry, I joined in just a little bit late.
Okay.
Cool name, by the way.
Thanks.
Corey Sherman, I'm hearing some background noise, so I'm just going to mute you. And if you want to ask a question, you just raise your hand, and we'll get you taken care of. But
Sounds great.
I do hear some background noise.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. What was that? Okay. Back to you, Corey Brown. This is something that was recommended to me by a friend of mine, and it's called Post Gopher. Corey, are you familiar with that?
I'm not. I'm sorry.
It's actually pretty cool. It's a plugin that you put on WordPress, and it basically creates a PDF of that web page. So if you're going to publish like a 3,000 word blog post, for example,
sure,
and it will send the that web page to your email inbox as a PDF. All of the links are active. So if you have a sponsor, you can click on that link right in that PDF, and it's very easy. I've just put it right on the top and the bottom of all of my web pages. There's no pop-ups. It's really valuable, and I've gotten a lot of people to subscribe to my email list that way. It's called Post Gopher. It's like $50, and if you're interested, I'll hook you up with because I have an affiliate link. I'll hook you up.
Okay, that sounds really good.
And another rule that I've heard that makes some sense is you don't put a pop-up on your homepage, but if someone clicks on like a podcast episode, for example, or a blog page, then people aren't likely to be as annoyed with a pop-up because they're committed to your website. What do you think about that?
Yeah, again, I'm pretty down on the whole pop-up thing, and I think that with Google, once Google starts targeting things, we all need to pay attention. And so I've shared some articles with my clients who are enamored with pop-ups. Some of them have redesigned them or are in the process of redesigning them to try to take up less real estate and still have a pop-up. But again, I would say, strategically placing your subscribe box is my recommendation versus a pop-up. And as soon as Google flips the switch on this, there's an SEO impact obviously to this. It's just like, if you don't have a responsive site, Google knows that, and your especially on your mobile searches, which is very high number, you're going to get dinged for those things. And so usually Google does things, at least what they say, and I believe them, is that they care about the experience of where they're sending people.
Right.
Because if they didn't, Google wouldn't be very useful. That's the theory, right? So if they consider like two sites that are fairly equal in value, one has a pop-up or one is not responsive and one is, it's pretty easy to see or to predict what Google is going to favor in that case. And so it all boils down to that experience, and pop-ups are considered to be a bad user experience. It's an interruptive thing. It prevents them from engaging in the content. Site speed is so important. Every millisecond matters. There's been numerous studies on that, how quickly your page loads. And to think about in that context, how quickly is my text rendering? How quickly can somebody start reading? You throw something up that's overlaying that, it's kind of the same principle, in that now you've just delayed me however long it takes that pop-up to open for me to figure out how to close it.
Yeah. Especially on an iPhone, it's really annoying. You have to find that little X right on the top right corner of the phone.
Exactly. And I find it highly annoying for me. I'm going fast all the time, and I'm on web pages all day researching and reading, and it drives me nuts to see that.
Well, what should Alex do if we're not going to do a pop-up? What's the best way that he can get, because he obviously wants, the end goal for him is to get email addresses. So what is the best course of action for him?
Well, again, I would recommend putting it somewhere on the page. And I apologize for not knowing more about Squarespace and their templates, but my guess is, since email capture is so common, there's got to be a way to at least embed it into your pages somehow. Like, so if you're using MailChimp or anybody like that, there's obviously copy paste code. You can customize it as to what you want to ask for. You can do styling, you can do all sorts of things with it. And then there's a simple copy paste code that you drop into your templates or web page. So that would be my recommendation, and to play with, moving it around and seeing, how are people responding to it being at the bottom or being at the top or being on the side or whatever, and just, kind of test different things and see, based on my traffic, how many people am I converting, to sign up.
All right, Mr. Corey Sherman, why don't you tell us about yourself, and maybe we can find a way that we can help you.
Well, sure. Well, this is all really, really great information so far, and I'm actually going to move to a different room here to reduce on some of that background noise. So I am, and I'm glad you had mentioned that earlier about WordPress. That's where I'm currently using my site, and I've been really, really more or less just playing with having different, I'm still on the free stuff, really.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I've been looking at how much is it worth to me right now with not a huge following to invest in that. And I do want to invest in it because that's, investing in my business as a music entrepreneur, and there are packages that I want to sell through either Skype lessons or different arrangements or anything like that. But what's the appropriate price point? Because WordPress will have, this is what everybody buys, but what's your take on that?
So based on what you're saying, I'm guessing you're on WordPress.com?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think, certainly WordPress.com is a great place to start. and I highly recommend that to people who are non-technical. And there is WordPress, the software, which you can download and install on a server, and then you can configure that, either through buying a theme or creating your own theme, or buying a theme and extending that theme.
Right.
And if you don't know how to do that, you can obviously learn it, but it's always great to have somebody who knows how to do that. So WordPress.com though takes all that stuff out of the equation. And in order to build an audience, I would say get your own domain, start on WordPress.com. It's cheap or free. And the only downside to WordPress.com is that you really are bound by what they're going to offer. And so if you have a unique idea for your website and you want to extend your website, it's not like having your own installed version of WordPress on your own server, where I can install any plugin I want. I can customize the theme however I want. WordPress.com has it fairly locked down. That being said, there's a lot of options that they provide. In terms of e-commerce though, there's a number of different e-commerce solutions that will handle digital products, like you're talking about, and you can always, link to that and even set those up on your subdomain. So like shop dot whatever your domain is .com.
Okay.
If you set up on a Shopify or Big Cartel or any of the hosted e-commerce platforms, and then with your own WordPress, you could do more integration between those things. But with WordPress.com, you're likely just going to be able to, add a tab to your navigation to say shop or lessons or whatever, and direct people to your online store.
I see. So you were talking about different plugins, and I've tried to mess around with those on the website, but it seems like you said, it's pretty locked in. So with the WordPress software, you have more options for different plugins, like that Post Gopher that was mentioned earlier. Okay.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah, because if you think about it, I don't know what the number is now, but I last I heard, I think it was over 30,000 plugins are available for WordPress.
Wow.
And for WordPress.com to manage that and know that, there's a lot of plugins out there that are neglected and old, and
Sure.
they'll break a site. And so WordPress.com, they obviously don't want to deal with that at their scale. You install a faulty plugin, it breaks your site, then you're emailing them, why is my site broken? They do, offer, they do create more controls around that to ensure that, they know, they vetted what their options are, and they know that, these things are not going to break your site. And so that's really why, that's the case there.
I see. Yeah.
But,
so
okay, I'm sorry. I want to mention one other thing. The beauty of starting on WordPress.com as well is, if you find success and you say, look, yeah, I want to do more with my website. I want to do more than what WordPress.com, offers. Then the great news there for you is that porting a WordPress site from one place to the other is like dead simple. And so you don't have to go recreate your content. If you were to say, I'm going to start my own WordPress site, download the software, get a hosting package that is optimized for WordPress, which in some cases you don't even have to download the software. You just have to, buy a WordPress managed hosting package. There's a export import routine that's built into WordPress that basically you just pull your whole site down, import it in, and it's an exact replica on your new domain or your new server. So that's another reason why I recommend that to people to get started, to not get into hosting and development bills and all the other things. Build your audience first. If you have success, you always have that option. It's really super easy.
So you're talking about moving to like a Bluehost or a HostGator type of hosting service, or?
Yeah, I mean any of them out there.
Yeah.
I like Media Temple, but there's a whole bunch of hosts out there that specialize in nothing but WordPress.
Right.
It's that's what they do all day long, and so you got to be careful with some of those because there are some elements and some hosts out there that are somewhat like WordPress.com in that, you know, they won't let you install just any old plugin. There are some things that, you know, lock down. And so you have to decide, you know, you have to kind of research that and say, do I want full control, or do I want a really managed solution where they are going to say, you can't use this plugin, you know, or we have a plugin for this. And so you can install your own plugin, you know, that you might like, you know, for this feature. But, you know, it's pretty standard fare. I mean, WordPress is powering somewhere between 27-29% of the web now. I think I just read they're aiming for 51%, and I'm guessing they'll probably get there. So there's just a ton of options out there for. You have a wealth of developers out there that are good at it. You have a wealth of hosting options out there that are solid for it. And so, you know, there's no shortage of resources out there for WordPress.
Great. Now, I do have one other question sort of around WordPress. And I do have a blog that I maintain on there as well. And if I'm looking to do e-commerce on my site, do you think it would be wise to have two different sites that are linked together, one specifically for my blog and then another for e-commerce? Or is it safe to kind of lump those together under one domain? Or what's your take on that? Can you speak to that?
Sure. So I don't know. I don't do a lot with WordPress.com other than, you know, recommend it to people who are just starting out as a resource. So I don't know what their e-commerce options are within WordPress.com, if they have any. WordPress, there's a very popular plugin out there called WooCommerce, WOO Commerce, and that's been the leading e-commerce plugin as far as I know for WordPress for a long time. And the company behind WordPress, Automatic, actually bought WooCommerce, which was really good news, I think, for the plugin. And it was already well maintained and everything else. But when they got into the game with it, I think it really solidified that this thing's going to be around for a long time and get a lot of attention. What WooCommerce does is you basically install the plugin, and it adds e-commerce functionality to your site. So again, I don't know that that WordPress.com offers that, any sort of e-commerce option. It'd be worth looking into. But if you were hosting your own WordPress site, and you would have that option to say, I want to have my own, you know, e-commerce experience within my site, same domain, and, you know, just basically configure your store within your site that way.
Interesting.
You know, outside of that, you know, I think certainly the leading e-commerce provider out there is Shopify. You know, they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest. And so, you know, with Shopify, you know, that's all they. I mean, that's not all they do. They offer you the ability to do blogs and whatnot. It's not as robust as what WordPress would offer.
Right.
In that regard, but it does offer you some ability. If you were just setting up a shop and your blog was secondary, you could do that. But you know, they're top notch when it comes to e-commerce capabilities. And so, you know, what people tend to do when they set up like a separate site, you know, for their e-commerce is they'll just set up a subdomain. So whatever your domain is, you can make it shop dot or lessons dot yourdomain.com and point it to your store. And then you can do some theming, you know, to try to, you know, make it at least close to, if you don't know, you know, how to program, you know, it might be a little bit more challenging, but there's some theming options, a color scheme and things of that nature you could do to try to mimic your site's look and feel. But you could also hire a Shopify developer and say, these are my templates. I want it to look like my content site, and they can implement, you know, a theme for you that way. So it's really, you know, it's worth exploring both options. You know, WooCommerce is free, and there's add-ons that you might like that, you know, aren't very expensive.
Okay.
And a very, very robust ecosystem around that plugin. And I know people that use it and love it. And I know people that prefer the Shopify thing because I think with WooCommerce, you probably have a little bit more configuration than you would with, say, Shopify, which is just launch my store, put my products, and go.
Sure.
You know?
Right.
I would recommend looking into both.
Well, thank you very much. That definitely
Sure.
gives me a direction to appreciate that.
Cool.
Awesome.
Hey, Corey, I have one last question, and we only
Mhm.
have the one attendee, but I've heard, and I know you said you don't know that much about Squarespace, but have you heard anything about it being a little more accommodating for musicians or a little more advantageous for musicians to use Squarespace as opposed to WordPress?
You know, over the years, I've recommended Squarespace to people that really didn't have a budget, you know, for starting a site. But, you know, WordPress.com, you know, they you know, maybe didn't like the look and feel of the themes that were available or whatever. And the thing I can say certainly about Squarespace is that they've done a really nice job providing themes and very, you know, they have themes for, if you're a restaurant, you can set up a restaurant
Yeah.
theme, you know, and
Yeah.
choose from those. What I've found though is that most people that I've talked to that have done that really don't like it for whatever reason, and want something that, you know, they feel really boxed in. And so I think it's another case where I think, you know, if you're just starting out, you know, it's a very inexpensive thing to set up and run. And certainly it's a beautiful site. It was coded by professionals. You know, your theme is going to make you look good. You know, they do a nice job with the design and code. But I think what people find is that, you know, they tend to outgrow it because, you know, you're running a site, you know, you have ideas for, gosh, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. And so the first question we fielded, you know, how do I get MailChimp in there? You know, I don't know if you could do either thing that I talked about
Right.
at a template level. I don't know if that's how Squarespace works. I just don't play in those spaces with kind of the do-it-yourself thing. I know there's Wix out there as well. But I think that, you know, if you're just starting out, you're bootstrapping this thing, you know, just to get your content out there, to get your audience built, you know. I started No Trouble on a really poor theme on a really cheap host. And, you know, it wasn't until our traffic really grew that I did anything about the hosting, and the hosting was slow. You know, it was not great. But, you know, I couldn't really justify spending, you know, bigger money on hosting, you know, with something that was an experiment. But once it became clear, like, hey, this is, you know, growing and it's at a certain level now, and we're making a little bit of money, you know, it certainly made sense then to do something, you know, more robust that way. And we've since upgraded the servers, you know, over the years as our traffic's grown. So, you know, it's a great thing to get started. You know, it's a great thing for cost effectiveness. You know, free or cheap is always great when you're starting out. And so, you know, versus hiring somebody who's going to charge you, you know, $10,000 to build a website that's highly customized, and you don't know yet because you don't have an audience yet. You don't know what's going to work and what doesn't. And so, you know, all the, and we all do it. I do it every day. You know, I think, oh, this is going to be the greatest thing in the world, and it's not. And I think this is going to be the dumbest thing ever, and it's huge. You know, so it's until we throw it out there, you know, we don't know. It's our best guess. And, you know, the important thing is, you know, build your audience, pay attention to, you know, what's resonating with them, what's working, what's not. You know, and then when you get to that point to say, you know what, I want to do something more custom. I want to implement all these ideas I have. You're better educated as to what those things should be.
All right. Well, we want to respect Corey Brown's time, and he's been very generous with it. But we can find him at coryweb.com, and just go right there. He's going to give you a free 30-minute consultation on your website. And looks like a great deal. Corey obviously knows what he's talking about. He's been in the trenches for years and years and years. So definitely take him up on that offer, coryweb.com. Thank you, Corey. And Corey Sherman is here. Thanks for joining us.
Hey,
thanks, guys.
Good to be here.
All right.
Thanks for doing this.
You got it.